Hi, I'm Mathai Fenn, and I did my PhD from the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences of IIT Bombay around late 1990s. One of the first questions that I'm asked when I meet somebody else who's also studied at IIT Bombay is, which hostel do you belong to? I took a while doing my PhD, so I was in different places, but one of the places that was allotted to me was Hostel 11. Yes, the ladies' hostel. That happened because at one time they were trying to allocate some of the top floor rooms to married students, and I was married before I joined IIT Bombay. I would even say just about married. I didn't stay there though because my wife was back in Kerala having our first son, so I didn't actually stay there, but I was allotted a room in the ladies' hostel. When I joined first, I joined in Hostel 3. So my dad called me one day and asked me, how's life in IIT Bombay? And I said, it's very different from our village because I could go to the ladies' hostel, I could stay in my friend's room until 11 o'clock. And 11 o'clock, men have to leave the ladies' hostel. So my friend and I walked back to H3, where we would spend the rest of the evening or rest of the night together, talking about things, working on things. So my father didn't like the sound of that, so he called my wife and said, you better go to IIT and see what's happening. Of course, he didn't tell her the reason, but she told her to go and check out IIT Bombay. So she traveled and came to IIT Bombay and stayed with me at Hostel 3 for 2 or 3 weeks. It was interesting time because before she could use the washroom, I would first have to go check out and ensure that it's empty and nobody is having a shower or whatever. And then I'd give her the green signal and then she could come and use the washroom. It was a very nice time. We made a lot of friends, people dropped by and all of that. But she did stay for 3 weeks at the men's hostel. So that's a little bit about, you could call it trivia. It's a little bit about me. Let's talk about what's going to happen on August 22nd. And that's the reason why I'm doing this video, because I want to invite you for my session on August 22nd on the blocks in learning. This is a topic that the organizers chose from the set of topics that I had given. So what are the blocks of learning? Blocks in learning. When I was in IIT, I happened to read an article by a French philosopher called Paul Ricoeur. It's interesting because he's probably the only guy I've heard who's considered an anthropological philosopher. So, or was it philosophical anthropology? I'm not very sure. But anyway, here's what Paul Ricoeur said. The article I read talked about the polysemy of words. Poly means many, semi means meanings. So the many meanings of words. What he said was that words have multiple meanings, and which of these meanings get fixed depends on how you use it in a sentence. So that's an interesting observation, right? Let me give you another example. While again I was at IIT Bombay, I read an article in Nature. I think it was the editorial. I picked up the old question of, is light a wave or a particle? And the editor said that most of us say, when we talk to our children, we say that it's both light, is both wave and a particle. And he said that's not the right way to say it, because it's not that it's both, it's actually neither. So when light is emitted, it has the potential to be either a particle or a wave. Right? Which of these potentials get actualized depends on the experimental setup that you have. So if you have one kind of setup, it becomes a wave, and if you have a different kind of setup, it behaves like a particle. So let's take this forward and ask the question of what does blocks in learning mean? So the word blocks have two meanings. The first meaning is the building blocks of learning, right? The Lego of learning. So the building blocks of learning. They are what we call gestalts. We'll talk about it when we meet what are gestalts and all of that. The other part of the meaning of block is, of course, an impediment to learning. What prevents us from learning? So that's the other part of the block. So we're going to be looking at both these aspects of learning, the building blocks on the one hand and the impediments on the other hand. Having said this, I must also tell you what is learning is a question that we'll be dealing with. So most of us, when we think of learning, we talk about what we learn in school, colleges, all of that. But think back about your days in IIT Bombay. Where was the biggest learnings that you got from? Were they from the class? Were they from textbooks? Or were they learning to play the guitar in SAC or play the drums in SAC, making new friends, having fun? In short, you learn to have an identity. That's what happened to most of us at IIT Bombay. And that's not something you can find in a book. That's not something you can put down to a mathematical formula. So by a large factor, the biggest learnings that we do are not in the classroom, are not from textbooks. In fact, are even very hard to put into words. So remember, block your date, August 22nd, so that we can talk about blocks in learning. And the format will be that we're going to have a short talk, about half an hour, and there's going to be enough time for a discussion, because that's what I believe in. I believe conversations are the most important tools for learning. So catch you on the 22nd.